Okay, so welcome to the tutorial session for today's meetup. And before we get started, just a few words about where this idea came from and how it's going to be organized. So the tutorial itself, the intention here is to create a simple game. And I know that experienced Unreal developers in the room may say, hey, you're not including game modes, you're not including UI, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. Yes, because the idea is to just go from start to finish, create a simple game that works, that you can actually deploy. Okay, it will be maybe wrong in some like mindset of proficient Unreal developer, but it will still help to kind of keep thinking about keeping it simple, right? So we will create a simple game, and we'll actually start from the complete pipeline, meaning that I will also show you how to create an asset in Blender, which is a 3D modeling software. I don't intend you to follow this part because it may be a little bit tedious, especially if you have no experience with Blender. But it will be recorded, so you can also follow the steps. So I have here two documents, which you will also get in a few moments. So these are just summaries of what we are going to do right now. And the way that I created these summaries may be of interest to you, just the kind of pipeline. So I pre-recorded this tutorial. So it exists also in raw format somewhere on the disk drive. And then I also spoke about everything I'm doing. So it got recorded as audio. I extracted the audio using Whisper AI, which is a free AI model that you can use for speech to text conversion. And then I fed that into ChatGPT, asking it to, hey, please, can you summarize what I've done in like a list like this? And so let's see how this works, because this is the first time I've done this, and hopefully it will help me not forget essential stuff that I'm supposed to do within the tutorial. Because there's like a lot of stuff, right? And it's very easy to get lost even for somebody who's more or less experienced. So, but what kind of game we're creating today is a tilt maze game. So essentially what it is you can think about it as a kind of labyrinth or maze. And there's a ball inside of there that you have to orient the maze a certain way. The ball then goes through the labyrinth, finally reaching a certain spot where it drops down. So this is the idea of the game. So right now, Oleg, you can get started making it if you want.
Okay. I don't have
Okay.
main file, actually.
Okay. I will give it to you in a moment. So, but also, like what was the inspiration for this one? I already mentioned this previously. So in 2019, we assembled a small team to participate in Global Game Jam. This was in February, correct me if I'm wrong. And the way that we met is through the Discord server for Unreal Meetup. So this was quite nice to kind of talk to the team. I don't remember who came up with this idea, but it doesn't really matter because it was really fun. So there during this global game jam, we developed a game. So the team lead is not here, but he was also featured in one of the pictures previously. If you're interested, you can also look for it. The topic of that global game jam was something like what home means to you or something like that. And so we kind of sat together and came up with a stupid idea, which eventually worked. So we created this game with a lot of in jokes, a lot of various puns included. So if you care, you can check it out. It's still available for download if you look for Global Game Jam 2019, Tallinn, and then Homesick. Yeah, but something like this you should find. So some familiar faces maybe. A couple of people from that team are here today. So the idea of that game was there was a kind of environment resembling a home from a kind of isometric perspective. Maybe you can call it that. Well, not really isometric, but the point is that it was tilting all the time, and you had to guide the character through the furniture safely. That's the idea. So I decided to, hey, let's get back to our roots and create a simple version of that today in 40 minutes. So yeah. You can check it out if you want. So here's what you need. Well, if you want to follow along, actually. So I'll just write this down on this whiteboard over here. CIS means Center for Intelligent Systems. TTU.EE, soon to be TalTech, finally. Also this one, and then UE51. So if you go there, you should be able to find some files. I will show them to you in a moment. So let's just go there. That's the end of the presentation in any case. So we can just go and see what's there. So here we have the maze asset in FBX format, so you don't have to use Blender. We can just download it from here and import it directly into an Unreal project and get started. And then there's also the summary that I advertised here that was made with this pipeline of recording the tutorial, extracting audio, converting audio to text, and then feeding that to GPT 3.5 Turbo and asking it to create a summary of the steps. And also, for those interested, there's also Blender steps here. Hopefully that's the correct file. Yeah, okay, so it's here. So you can also follow that if you want. But now let's get to the tutorial. Again, Blender I will do fast because, well, actually the idea there is also quite simple. So for anyone who's had experience with Blender before, it should not be a big problem. So once again, Blender is a 3D modeling application. It's free, it's open source, and it has grown substantially since I started using it personally. That was 2014. Initially, we used it for 3D printing. So we wanted to have a solution for designing some CAD stuff that we can later print out. And so Blender was open source, and it was still version 2.6, I think. The interface was much less user-friendly, much less professional looking, but they eventually secured some funding, and they were able to proceed and improve, and they improved the interface like drastically. So what you see now is, yes?
You prefer this over Maya or 3D Max?
It's open source.
Yeah.
And since we're using it in university, I mean, we can also use something like whatever it was called for Mecha.
Well, have you played with the generative plugins for it yet?
Oh.
You can use text to 3D model.
Yes, I tried it.
Okay.
It's quite interesting. Yeah, I think the future is there, and it will be quite interesting to see what eventually comes out of this. But yeah, the advantage of Blender. I mean, I have experience also with what is it called, 3D Studio Max. I worked with 3D Studio Max before, but Blender somehow, since I started using it, I find that I return to it more often than SolidWorks or something like this. So Blender is good, especially for, again, small teams with limited funding for university because it's open source and whatnot. So yeah, Blender, when you launch, this is Blender 3.5. So when you launch it, you will see something like this, a splash screen. And for experienced Blender users, there's also a bunch of options that you may want to change. So it used to be like in Blender, you selected with the right click on the mouse, which is counterintuitive. They fixed this, and thankfully it was not an easy, not a very difficult kind of thing to change in your mind to switch to normal way of doing things. So yeah, when you open it, and especially for novice users, you will be intimidated by the interface. I mean, tons of things going on in here. Like, how do we proceed with this one? So, point is that when you click away from the splash, what you end up with is a camera, cube, and a point light. That's all you get. So to navigate this one, you usually use something like middle click and then drag, and then you can just rotate around the scene like this, or you can hold various modifier keys like shift just to slide along, or whatever else there is. So I usually do it just with the middle mouse click, shift sometimes, and you can also, if you have a numeric keypad, you can also orient the specific view as you want, like, for example, side view, top view, and all those things. So that's something that you may want to use as well. All right, but usually when they start Blender tutorials, what they do in the beginning is they delete the cube. So it's like classic thing. If you go to YouTube, like, okay, here's the Blender tutorial, let's delete the cube. We will not delete the cube. That's what I'm saying. So when you have an object selected, by the way, if you have a numeric keypad, which I advise you do, if you're working with Blender, so you can press on the dot there, and what this will do, it will focus on the object that you're working with. So the relative rotation, all that stuff, so the pivot point will change and you will be focused on this object. So another important key in Blender is key N. So if you press it, it will give you this panel over here, which allows you to set various properties of the object in here. So in this case, what I'm interested in is resizing this cube. So the way I do it is here we have dimensions, and I want to make it 10 meters by 10 meters by 1 meter. So that's what I will do. I will just hit on this guy, and I will type 10, tab, 10, tab, and then 1, and that's it. So, and then I will have this kind of deformed cube. The idea here is that we have just created the base for our maze. So the way that we are going to proceed from here is we are going to subdivide this mesh, because this is a mesh. It's a very simple mesh, granted, but still, what we can do now is we can subdivide it into a kind of equal cubes, let's say, and then from there we can just extrude, and we will create the walls and the labyrinth and all that stuff using this approach. So in Blender, there are two main modes when modeling is concerned. So the first one is the one that we are in right now. It's called object mode. By the way, here in this part, okay, so here basically you have this selection. So object mode, edit mode, blah, blah, blah. So the two primary modes in this one is object mode and edit mode. So whenever I hit tab on the keyboard, I switch between those modes. And right now I'm in edit mode. So what this means is that I directly go to the mesh editor. So before, I just looked at the mesh as a single object, and this is why it's called object mode. And when I tab into this edit mode, I can actually change various, like the topology of the mesh. So I can click, for example, this vertex over here, press G on the keyboard, and then you can see I can deform further this poor cube. But what we need to do, as I said, we need to subdivide and extrude. These are two standard operations in any 3D modeling software. Of course, depends on the workflow, but this is what we will do. So the way to make the extrusion work is you choose this guy. Over here you have the selection. I think they're called gizmos. So the selection gizmos. So by default, you get to select vertices, which are just points in 3D space that you can drag around and deform the mesh. But you can also choose edge mode, which we will also make use of, and then also the this guy, which is face mode. So faces are made of edges, and edges are made with vertices, right? So logically, it's like this. So when you click, left click in Blender, you can then select a given face. Again, remember we're in face select mode. And so we choose the top face, and then I'm middle clicking. I'm just dragging to see the bottom face. Then I'm holding Shift, and I'm clicking again. And now we have both of these faces selected. So in Blender, what you also, it used to be spacebar, I think, but now it's F3. Rather random key selection, but if you press F3, it goes into this browser for different kinds of operations that you can perform on meshes and all of those things. So here, what you should be looking for is subdivide. And then when you click on subdivide over here, it will subdivide our cube, but it looks a little boring, right? So it doesn't give us enough cells to work with. So, but then there's also an operator panel at the bottom here, which you can expand. And this will give you the ability to modify the properties of the last operation. So at the moment, what happens is, what happened is we cut the mesh just once. From every side. So we, instead of one face, now we have 4 faces on top and also 4 faces on the bottom. So if we want more faces, what we do is we just increase the number of cuts. So I will increase them to 10. And then I will press enter to confirm. And as you can see, now we have a nicely subdivided cube mesh with more faces, which means that now we can select those faces, and we can extrude, and thereby we will create our maze. So I will click out of there. By the way, this is also important. So whenever you have something selected, when you click outside in edit mode, you will deselect everything. So right now we have the selection, and what I will proceed in doing is I will just control click on the edges here, like this, which will select all of these faces. I will not click on the last face over here, just the previous one. So like this, and we get our border. So basically from here we can already start extruding, but I think so it can lead to problems if we first extrude these ones and then we start extruding adjacent faces. But maybe it's a good thing to show, because this is a pitfall that I myself fell into. So let's first extrude the boundaries of our maze. So I press E on the keyboard, and then I type 1, and then it just gives me this extrusion. So now we have the walls of our maze ready. And the only thing left now is to kind of create some maze structure. So I will shift click on some of these faces. I'm still in edit mode, by the way, so I will create some sort of maze just randomly. And by the way, for Blender, there's a plugin that allows to create mazes automatically, so you may want to check that out. I'm just clicking randomly here, trying to come up with some interesting pattern. Maybe I will fail, but it doesn't matter. So something like that maybe will work. Maybe also something like this. Okay, so once I'm ready, once I'm happy with my selection, once again I press E and then 1, and here we go. So now we have the complete maze created like this. But there's a problem. The problem lies in the fact that I've extruded these guys separately, so now we have additional geometry that we cannot see, but it's going to mess things up. So one thing that you can do to profile your meshes in Blender, you can, because this is a new installation of Blender for me, so what I will do is I will go to File, and the reason is I didn't enable the extension yet, or was it Edit? Yes, Edit, and then Preferences. And in here you can find add-ons, and in here you can start searching for Print. And there's an extension here that is called 3D Print Toolbox. Obviously, I started my talk with mentioning that we use this for 3D printing. This is how I know this. So, and then you can just enable it. And the magic about Blender is that whenever you enable something in extensions, usually that means that you don't have to restart Blender. It just magically appears in the interface. And by the way, it's all Python based, just so you know. So you can create your own extensions for Blender using Python, and it's quite impressive actually what they've been able to do with all that stuff. But okay, so now I've enabled this 3D print toolbox, and immediately I can see it over here. So we'll click on it, and here you see we have different things, like we have checks that we perform on the mesh, and we also have cleanup tools. So for now, what I need to do is I need to tab out of edit mode into object mode, and I will just perform some checks on this mesh. So I will click on check all over here, and then, okay, so you see we have some problems right here. Some intersect faces. Now, because this is intended for printing, we also see overhang face, which is not a big or a major problem for the mesh outside of 3D printing, but with this intersect face, it might be an issue. And you can also try to fix up your mesh automatically by clicking this distorted and make manifold buttons. So let's try the latter. So let's try making manifold. Oops. Something bad happened to our mesh. This is clearly not something that we have intended, right? So we see some strange geometry. And the problem is that when we export this into Unreal Engine, we will see the same, well, not the same, but it will be screwed up. Basically, your mesh will be screwed up. And this is something that we want to avoid. So how can we fix this? This make manifold tool is a good one, but it will not help you in all instances. So I will press Ctrl Z to get back to my original formulation of the mesh. And what I will do is I will tab into edit mode again. I will press A to select all vertices. Right now I'm in vertex select mode. Press F3 and then search for merge by distance. So what this will do is merge by distance. So what this will do is if it detects adjacent geometry that is not visible but is overlapping, it will just merge it into a single face or whatever. So in this case, well, usually it's currently we have selected vertices, so this is what it will do. It will just merge um, vertices that are essentially in the same space, occupy the same coordinates, but create problems in terms of this additional geometry. So I will merge by distance, and let's try again. So let's try to select, I've tabbed out of edit mode. I will try to make manifold again, and now everything is okay. So this is a pitfall I just wanted to show you, and it's quite important. So one more thing that we need to do to the mesh is we need to create the path for the ball to escape uh, downwards, because it will be physics-based game. So therefore, what we need to do is we need to locate an interesting spot in there, and I will use this once again mesh selection. I'll choose a place to remove the meshes from faces from, and maybe it's here. So let's just click delete and then choose faces, and then at the bottom the same face you should also delete. But again, now we have a problem because we have some missing faces now, because this was not in the original geometry. So what we can do now is we can switch to edge selection mode and then choose the edges that should form a single face. So in this case, again, here's one edge, another one, press F, and that will create a face right there. And then also for this side, again, F creates a face. Here as well, F creates a face, and one more here and here. I'm not sure that I selected the top one. Maybe it would be easier to see in wireframe mode. And for that, you press Z, and then you have this wheel of choice, and then you choose this one. And now in wireframe mode, it's easier to see if you have selected actually those edges. So again, F to create a face, and we can go back to solid view, and our maze is actually complete. So one more thing that is advisable to do in general is to triangulate your mesh. So here I will go into modifiers to make it simpler. So for this mesh, it's not so important because it consists of like good geometry in the sense that everything is planar and under right angles. But if you have a more complicated mesh and you have quads, quad geometry means that we have like 4 vertices that make up a face. You want to subdivide that so you have a triangle, so you triangulate. So here in the right-hand side menu, you can choose modifier properties here, and then choose modifier, add modifier, and the modifier we're looking for is triangulate. So here it is. And then those guys can probably remain the same. Maybe you want to choose beauty. For some reason they changed the default to shortest diagonal, but I will keep it at beauty. Doesn't matter. So keep this modifier active. Don't apply it. The reason for that is if you keep this modifier here, you can always disable it, and it will not affect your mesh or your geometry. But at the same time, it gives you flexibility, because when you start exporting this mesh, which we will do momentarily, you can say that I want this guy applied upon export, and that's it. It will then export having this applied. So, okay, I think we've done everything. So now go to File Export, FBX. This is the interchange format, basically, that we are going to be using. And I will save it to my desktop with lots of different files in here. Call it something like Maze version 6, I think. This would be FBX. And now important, choose here limit to selected objects in the export dialog. And then finally also apply, so apply transform, that's clear, but where's apply the modifiers? So this is a new version of Blender. Maybe they changed something here. Or maybe I cannot find it simply. Interesting. Okay, in that case, what you would do is you would simply make a copy by Shift D. Just make a copy in case you need it later. Choose this guy again. Now you will apply this modifier. If you go back to edit mode, you see now we have triangulated faces. So go back again to object mode, and then let's try to export it as FBX. So for some reason I cannot see the supply modifier stuff here, but doesn't matter. So yeah, and then you can just export it as maze whatever version 6.fbx, and that's it. And that should be it for the Blender part. Took a lot longer than I estimated, so Oh, I will have to speed up for the Unreal Engine part,
You
which
said you're recording or?
yes, I'm recording. I'm recording. Hopefully,
Because
at least the
I
LED.
don't see this red point in the OBS.
Uh,
Did you press the record button?
I really hope so.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Okay. So I am recording, and hopefully everything will be okay. So okay, now let's jump to Unreal Engine finally. So I think Alek is already finishing the game, but
Yeah, I'm already creating logic for restarting all.
okay. So he has a huge advantage on me, but still I will try to be as precise as possible. So with Unreal Engine installed, we're going to be using Unreal Engine 5.1. So you can launch it, and if you launch it for the first time, it will compile the shaders, which will take a long time. And it's a problem, so I get to blow my nose in the meantime. Actually, I've already compiled the shaders, so it should start right away. So here I already have this maze game test, which is a fallback in case I fail to recreate everything in 40 minutes, but I will try. And we will just create a new project now. So this is the browser, and then you click on games over here, and then you have blank. And then today we are going to be using blueprints, and the logic for the game is going to be like super simple. So blueprint, then target platform for now will be desktop. The quality preset will be scalable. Otherwise, my laptop might blow up eventually. And here's the first thing. I think I'm following the tutorial correctly. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your project is named in some coherent way from the start. So you don't want to be messing around with refactoring later on. So in this case, I'm free to choose whatever name I want because this is just a test. But if you're a beginner and you really care about your time, because if you create a name that something blah 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 test number one, and then you decide, okay, this is my main project, it will be a hell to refactor later on. So just keep that in mind. I will call this Maze, come on, Maze version 6, and I will hit create. So Unreal has changed a few things between versions 4 and 5, and they revamped the interface somewhat, and the interface now looks cleaner, which is big thanks go to them for that. So people are not intimidated by it anymore as much. So by default, there used to be this room scene in Unreal Engine 4, which actually, for my intents and purposes, worked much better. Because I don't really need this geometry over here with the landscape and whatnot, and the sky and all those things. So what I will do is I will simply create, or rather delete these guys from here. But again, for beginners, we just launched Unreal Editor, and here we have the main area where you will create the level. So the idea is that you create a level, and then you add a logic to it. You add something that is called actors, and that they can do something on the level. Very roughly speaking. So, and then you also have things like meshes, which you insert, like static meshes. That this will form the, this will become part of your map that the player or whatever needs to navigate. And then you also have various effects, like here we have sky effect, which we are not going to be using, simply just there for beauty at this point. So right now, I will go to this outliner panel, which is on the right. And by the way, if you don't see the same thing, you can go to Window, and then you can choose Load Layout and then Default Editor Layout. So just you will reset the complete layout as well. So here I will choose all the guys here in Landscape, and I will mercilessly delete them because they're not necessary by just pressing Delete. And by the way, in the outliner, same navigation ideas also work, like middle click and drag, and you will be able to navigate this thing. And other keys like zooming in, zooming out, and right-clicking and dragging. So just experiment to see. Right now there's nothing to experiment with, so I cannot show you. But I will also delete this guy, so Sky Sphere. When you click on something inside this um, level editor, you can just delete it like that. So I chose the sky, and I will delete it as well.
Shouldn't
Yes?
you delete the landscape as well? Otherwise, it'll show up as landscape 2 when you do the next one.
Can I delete it?
Yeah.
Okay, finally. I was not able to delete it for some reason previously. I don't know what happened.
Only after you delete all of the sections, then you can delete
okay.
the whole.
Good to know. Okay. So in any case, right now what I'm interested in deleting is this volumetric cloud. So let's kill it off. And now we're basically left with a level like this with nothing on it at the moment. So what we need to do is bring in some content, right? So for that purpose, there's content drawer on the bottom left. You can click on it and it will open the drawer. And as a drawer, when you click away from it, it will again collapse. What you can do is you can actually dock it so you see it all the time. Maybe I will actually do it for the intents and purposes of this presentation, because then you can see all the assets that we have created in a single place. So right now there's no content because we didn't include any starter content, things like this. So now we need to import our mesh. So click on import, and then I will navigate to this Maze 6. You may have something else. So also have pictures of Oleg here for the purposes of this meetup as well. Did I save it here? Okay, here we go. So Maze 6 FBX. I will open it. There's the import dialog. So this is how you import meshes. I will import it. It will say, it will give me a couple of errors probably. Yeah, something like that. But it's fine, I guess, I hope. So we'll close this down, and now we'll just experiment with this mesh. So we have a couple of them. So this one, in fact, I will delete the second one so that it's not in the way. And then I will just drag it onto the level space, something like this. And then I will just visually inspect it. And by the way, in Unreal Engine, in order to focus on an object, you press F, which is a little bit more logical. So now I can actually navigate it properly, do various things here. So what I care about is that I still have the drop for where the drop will go, where the ball will go eventually. So I will try to navigate there. As you can see, I'm having some trouble. I'm not frequently using this navigation gizmos and whatnot. So it's here. The gap is there. Great. So we will make use of this gap later. So that's our labyrinth at the moment, or maze, and but it's a static mesh at the moment. In order to add some mechanics to it, we will actually be using something that is called an actor component. And again, we will be using blueprints. Now, for the intents of this demonstration, I don't really need this mesh as a static mesh, so I will delete it. And what I will do is I will now create, in the content browser, I will create a new actor. So the way you do it is you go right-click in the content browser and you choose Blueprint class. Click on there, and you will have a selection of things to choose from, and the first one is what you want, which is actor. So you click on this, and then let's call it maze, a maze actor or something like this. Not very creative, but it will work for this purpose. So this is our main, the main place where we are going to do some coding. Not a lot of it, but some coding in order to support whatever that you need. So one more thing before that though is maybe it makes sense to also immediately configure the collision for our mesh. Because otherwise it will use simple collision, and the ball, when we insert it onto the level, it will just stick on the top of the mesh because it will think it's it's solid without any of those things for the maze. So if I double click the mesh editor, I can actually have a look at the mesh. Double click on the mesh, which opens the mesh editor, and now here's the mesh. In mesh settings, you have to navigate. You can also use search, by the way, in all of these guys, because there's a lot of options here, and they're really annoying. So what you can do is you can search for something like collision, I think. So maybe Oleg can correct me here, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set it so that we are using, actually, for collision, something that will work for us when we drop the ball inside of this guy. So I cannot find it. I'll just scroll down.
What is it?
So again,
Which one?
so I want complex collision to be default one for this one.
Okay. Right. Use complex collision. Complex. No, without use, just complex. And not project default.
Okay, yes. Okay, thanks. I have it in the notes, but it's faster to ask you. Okay, so there are a couple of options here. There's simple and complex. Use simple collision and then use complex collision. So I will use this complex collision to simplify things later on when we insert the ball with physics. So now we have that, and we should also save this mesh. Okay, so now let's double click our newly created actor component. Right now it's not on the level, so we will just be using the editor, the blueprint editor, to create this guy. So when I double click on the actor in the content browser, I will get this editor over here. Again, bunch of options here, but what we care about today is this viewport guy and the event graph. So in viewport, this is where we are actually going to be inserting the mesh itself, because we do need something to play with, right? So here, default scene root, what we will add is mesh, I guess, or what is it?
Static mesh.
Is it
Static mesh.
Let me confirm with my notes. I don't trust you with this one.
Static mesh. Static mesh component. Yes.
Yes, I believe you. Okay, it's just that I want to make sure that it's here as well. Yes, it's here. I just wanted to make sure that ChatGPT was able to also give me that one. Yes, static mesh. It's a bit deceiving a name because it's not going to be static mesh. It will actually be dynamic. So the way you do it is first you add the static mesh component, then you choose it in this outline, and then you choose the specific mesh that you want to use with it. So click on here and choose our Maze version 6. And once you do this, you should get this guy inserted here like this. So now we have an actor with a mesh. Again, I have to focus on something and I can just navigate like this. So now we have an actor with a mesh with a, by the way, the pivot point is in the middle over here, which if we use rotation gizmo, by the way, here, you can see that if you start rotating, it seems like to be correctly oriented according to the pivot point, which is in the middle of the mesh. This is what we want. So we have this guy, and then we have the default material, which is fine for now. And now you should make sure that it's movable as well. I think it configures this automatically, so whenever you insert the static mesh and then you add the mesh, it will become movable. It will become movable means that it's more expensive to render, because static meshes are more more optimizations can be applied to them, but when you're dealing with movable meshes, lighting has to be computed dynamically, so it's expensive. But in this case, we will use this one. So okay, so we have inserted this one. What we want is to tilt it actually, right? So this tilting will be driven by mouse events. So let's go now to the programming part. So in Unreal Engine, the way you code stuff with blueprints, and actually, in any case, you are using, everything is event-driven. So you have events that are driving your gameplay. So you have event begin play, for example, here, which I think we're not going to be using today. But also you have this guy. I can zoom in, hopefully. So event actor begin overlap, and then also event tick. So event tick is something that we are going to be using. This is what we'll use to update our mesh as we are tilting it with the mouse. And we are going to be also making use of mouse events. And I made it like, if you want to go all the way, you have to configure input in your project configuration. But in this case, I will make it very simple. I will just insert these events like brute force here. For this, in the event editor, what you want to do is you want to search for something like mouse X, which will generate an event anytime it detects a mouse movement. And it will return an axis value to you, which we will be using to orient our mesh. And the same thing, right click over here and type in mouse Y, and you will get another event. Another event that will trigger and give you the Y axis of the mouse. And again, the events will fire and we will update certain variables. So for this one, we will also be making use of variables because we want to variables to keep the state of rotation. So for that purpose, you can create a variable on the left-hand side. So here you press on the plus icon over here, and then you can type in something like rotation x, for example, and then make sure that you choose float. So this will become a floating point variable that will hold a single floating point value. And the same thing for rotation y. So ROTY, and it will automatically place a float here. So what we will do on mouse movement is we will update the values of these variables. So for that, you need, again, it's event driven, and for setting values and getting values, you have two specific things. When you start dragging from the variable palette onto the right, you will get a kind of, again, this is with a left click. So you drag from the variables into the workspace, and then you release, and then you have two options: get, in this case, the name of the variable, and then you can also set it. So in this case, we will get, or rather set, the value. So, well, actually, no, and we need both. So first, let's work with rotation x. So I will drag in both of these. So the get value will just give you the value, and then also set value. The reason why we need both is that we want to update the value of the variable when we have mouse movement. So for that reason, you can just drag the event from mouse X to the set guy over here, which will set the value to 0. But what we will do is we will add to the previous value of this variable. So you start dragging from this value, and then when you let go, you get options, and then you type plus, and then it gives you the option to add something. And then what you do is you can just, if you control click on the inputs there, you can disable them. So just to make it a little more consistent, I will drag in from rotation x the previous value in the variable to our plus operation, and then the other one will go to the mouse x, and then finally we end up with the value, and then this is what we set the value of the variable to. So it's a bit convoluted in some ways, maybe, but this is the way that we do it. We can do it this way. So, and the same thing for mouse y. So basically we need to do the same. So we bring in the variable from here, we get the value of the variable, and then we also bring the set variable guy over here, and then whenever we detect mouse movement, we will actually be setting the value, but we also need to update the value. And how we do this, we take the value of the mouse movement, or the mouse axis, we add to the previous value of the variable, and then we store it in the same variable. So in C,
may I add one thing?
Yes.
A short one.
Yeah.
This is a really nice place to add sensitivity controls as well. Just you can multiply axis value by
Yes.
sensitivity setting, so like you can make it faster or slower if you need.
Yes.
This is
So
like the right place.
so Oleg is thinking from already, like experience perspective. You give this to the users, and they're like, my mesh is not moving, or my maze is not moving. What do I do? Help! And then support calls, and it's not good. So yeah, thank you. So again, this tutorial is intended as a very simple explanation of how things work in Unreal. So there are a lot of things I'm omitting from the discussion. But feel free to add. It's always nice to hear some good advice that will save you time down the line. Okay, so we have created this one right now. What we need to do now is we need to actually update the rotation. And for this, we will be using event tick. So the way it works is from event tick, I will just, actually, I think I will do it like this. I will select static mesh over here, and I will right click, and I will search for set world rotation. And for the static mesh, it will actually create this guy for me. So this is how we will update this value eventually. Because we need a rotator here, what we need to do is we actually need to create a structure that this rotator will support. So I will...
And secret fast thing, right click, split input.
Okay, let's try this.
Just like...
Split struct
Yeah.
in. Okay, thanks.
that's like really like was revelation for me at some point.
Okay, okay, thanks. That's really helpful actually. Yeah, because I did want to show how to split the structures, which could also be useful in some cases, but yeah, this works as well. So once we have this, we want to change the rotation of x and y. So what we will do is once again we will drag these guys in here, get rotation x, get rotation y, and we will just set them as rotation values for x and y respectively, just like that. So essentially, now the only thing missing is we need to drive this event by event tick. So event tick is a special thing that fires every frame. So on every frame, what we will be doing is we will be reading the values of these variables and we will be setting the world rotation of our mesh accordingly. So essentially, that's what we have done so far. Let's compile and let's test it because I don't know how much time I have. Hopefully, I will be able to actually finish the tutorial.
Just fast fix.
Yes.
Did you set receive inputs for this?
Not yet. This is something that I will do in a moment. Can you set it here?
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
So not
Class settings.
Okay.
Receive inputs.
maybe that's actually a good comment because I was about to show how you set it in world on the level, but okay, if you can set it here, it's also good.
Or
So
class
here,
defaults or class settings, one of them.
yeah, okay. So where is it?
Class defaults should be.
Class defaults, auto receive.
Search input.
Yeah, so it's auto receive input, I guess. Yeah, so when you configure this property, what this means is that it will auto receive input from your first player, which in this case will mean my mouse, when I click on the actual game and run it, it will auto receive the input from the mouse, hopefully. So yeah, you can configure it here in class defaults. You can also do this when you drag the actor into the level. You can also configure it there. It's maybe in some cases more flexible. I don't know. Experts is over here.
And at some
You're doing,
yeah, sorry.
you're doing this from the content on the left, right? So you click on the content over there, or how did you open up this?
On top class
Okay, just
defaults.
class
Yeah,
defaults,
yeah, it's
okay.
on top here.
Also, like in auto receive inputs, there is also a priority because if you have multiple like same actors or different actors that receive inputs, if you have the same input events in it, like if priority is higher on different one, only one will receive. So that's always a pain in my experience sometimes at least.
Yeah, but okay, let's compile and test this out. So click compile over here in the left hand corner. And then what we need to do is we simply need to drag this actor onto our level. So let's drag it here. And I think it should be working already at this stage. So let's launch the kind of preview. And when I click, yep. So when I just click inside this level, while I'm playing it, now I'm able to control the tilt of our maze. So very simple, elementary stuff, but we were able to do this in 20 minutes, I guess. Okay, so now what we will do is we will add the logic for our ball as well. So we need to add a ball onto our level. Apart from that, another thing that I would probably do is I would insert a camera and then make it so that when you launch the game, it always goes directly to the camera. But maybe we can get away with this formulation just in the interest of time because I think I will not make it if I spend time explaining that. Let's see. If I have time, I will do it. So in order to make things interesting, maybe we want to put our ball somewhere here. So first of all, maybe we also want to put the mesh in world coordinate 0. So let me go into the properties. So our mesh currently is somewhere, it's floating somewhere. So when I click on the mesh in the level editor, then I can just go to the coordinates and I can zero them out. So 0, oops, I'm pressing tilt for some reason. 0, tab,
Wait a second.
0, tab 0.
You forgot to set the camera. You press F.
But I can press F, yeah, and I can also locate it here, right? So I can just do it like this.
If there was a small arrow on the right of those settings, if they're changed, if you press them automatically, they will automatically zero. Optimization of your time.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, now we have this at world coordinate 0 for consistency. And what we will do now is we will just add this sphere. Thankfully, that is fairly easy to do. I will not create an actor for this one. I will just create a mesh. So from here, you can add some stuff. Like in this case, I want to create shape, which is a sphere, which appeared almost where I wanted it to appear, but it's too large at the moment, so I will have to resize it. Any fast way to do it?
Oh, it's scale.
So yeah, I'll lock the scale
And you
so that I just resize one of those and everything is resized simultaneously, and I can just do something like this. Okay, and now another thing that we should not forget about is simulate physics, isn't it? For the sphere. So in the search, when you have the sphere selected, you can go to search, and then I guess I can search for physics. And then there's this checkbox that says simulate physics. I will tick this guy, and here you can also adjust some parameters. Like by default, the ball will be really bouncy. So if you like move the maze around, you can actually make it bounce, which is quite fun actually to do. So you can like impress your friends by doing it like I don't know, maze golf or whatever. Just make it jump and then land directly into the gap. So right now I just enabled simulate physics. I'm not sure that that's enough, but let's see what happens if I click play over here. Okay, the ball actually falls into our maze, and now we can manipulate and make it jump like this. So already, that's it. So
5-0.
yeah, so it's in limbo right now. But yeah, so here also I think we can still move. So I can actually orient myself a little bit better, because right now the mouse control is reversed for me, so it's not very convenient or um, to move this maze. Maybe I can just reorient something like this. Let's see if it makes a difference. No, it's completely reversed. So I guess what I want to do is just move myself in this direction and just run it from here. No, interesting. Okay. So the quick way to do this, how would you do it?
First of all, I would add static camera, and then
Yeah.
like to reverse your controls, you just open the maze actor and multiply by your axis value.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I had this in the previous version, but I think now we're oriented more or less correctly. So I will just, in the interest of time, I will maybe keep it like this.
Touch also, like to place your ball onto the maze, you can select the ball and press insert, so it will fall down to the closest collision. Really nice added feature.
Yeah, I prefer actually it to fall down like this, but
Okay.
yeah,
Sure.
but it's a good comment. Yeah, sure. So you can see that it's quite bouncy. You can change the mass, I guess, and
To not like actually more mass won't change a lot because you control not a physical object, and you still can do like super massive touch.
yeah, but eventually I was able to guide it. So now something to finish this off actually is to just create some logic for finishing the level. So right now we have a very basic game. I mean, I can go into detail how I think it might be designed differently and include some additional things. Like it would be really fun to have this in VR instead of like just on a flat screen, and so forth. But the basics are there. Anyhow, so let's move on to the final thing, which in this case will be game and logic. So the way I implemented it in my explorations of the simplest possible way is we go back to this actor editor, and in here what we will do is we will insert another component to our maze. So I will add now a component, and I will search for box, and I will find this box collision. And I will insert it just as a box. It doesn't really matter right now how we call it, but now we have a box collision component attached to the static mesh. Now we can go back to the viewport tab over here. And in here, if you select box, so not clear to me where it is right now. So maybe wireframe view, we can actually locate it. It's not very clear, but okay. So having this selected, I can still drag it, right? So choose the dragging gizmo over here, and yes.
And a quick note, really quality of life improvement shortcut is that when you press spacebar, you can change those, like transform gizmos real quick instead
Okay.
of using the mouse.
Or Q, well,
So it's
Q,
just
the
like
W, E are also switching this.
saves huge amount of time and
When you're doing it fast, definitely it's a productivity feature. So what I want to do right now is just roughly place the guy in our gap. I guess top view might work for that better, slightly. I cannot see.
Rotation on it as well. You need to zero it out.
I guess it took the rotation, right, of this guy.
Yeah, like on the right you can remove the rotation and it will be.
Yeah.
Now it's location.
Oops.
Control Z, Control Z.
So why is it not?
Because you select it's only one input.
Okay.
And yeah.
Rotation here is 0. Okay. So just roughly put it somewhere in there. Let me try to navigate. And still the rotation seems off, or is it okay? So just place it roughly somewhere in the gap. Okay, it should be enough actually. So now what we will do is we will create the most advanced UI interface ever with Unreal. Is that we're going to create an event for this box, which will be, if you choose the box in the outliner here and then right-click here and start typing event, hopefully, then for the box itself, so add event for box, add component begin overlap is over here. Maybe end overlap is better, I don't know. But let's try begin overlap. Okay, so this is how you can create events for specific components like this. And what you need is you need to understand with what this component is colliding, and this will be in here under other actor. So our other actor is actually the ball. So before we proceed with any logic here, the simplest way I could think of setting up this logic is when we have the ball. What we can do is we can assign a tag to it. So having it selected, sphere, I will now search for tag. I guess it will work. So component tag, and let me see how I called it in the tutorial. Game ball, I called it. It's a bit of a reference to tennis and squash, but nobody picks up that reference, so it's fine. So component tags, and then now you can add some tags to this guy, and we'll call it as promised game ball, just like that. And now this guy has a tag attached to it. Now we can go back to the logic over here, and what we can do now is based on the other actor. So let's start dragging from here. We can say has tag. So it's a ready function, actor has tag, and we can compare it with the specific tag, which you could create a reference inside of this blueprint to the ball, blah, 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 but I will just say game ball over here. I will just name it directly in here. So the logic so far is whenever we detect uncomponent begin overlap with something, what happens is we will fire an event, and then we also have a bit of a logic which says, okay, if the other actor with which the collision begins, if it has tag game ball, then do something, or not do something. At this point, it just returns a Boolean value that we need to use. So this one here is branch, is what we're looking for. And we have branch. This is the condition. So if it's true, we have to do something. And this branch will be driven by our uncomponent begin overlap with our collision box. Good. So now comes the advanced UI part. So if this is true, print string And in here, you say good job. So what this will do is whenever we win this game, what will happen is here in the top left corner, we will see for a brief period of time the text good job. So how more advanced can you get? But that's not all. Actually, just to show what else we can do here, we can reset the level as well. So if we win, great. If the ball goes to limbo, we lose, and then nothing happens. But if we actually win, we want to restart the level. So again, the simplest way to do this that I thought of is just start dragging from here, get level, get current level name. So this will return a value of the current level name, and now we just do open level by name, and we just connect these two. And I think that's our game. So looking from a bird's eye view, not many different things are going on here, but even with this configuration, we're still able to create some meaningful interaction. It's not advanced, it's just basic stuff, but you just still, if you complete this tutorial, you have made a game. So let's save this actor now, and let's see if our complete game works. So just hit run over here. The ball falls into the maze, and now I'm going to have to guide it carefully. I didn't insert a point light, which might have helped. So it's a bit dark, but I guess I'm becoming tilt maze professional by this point. And go. And nothing happens. Okay. Debugging time.
Quick fix is on the sphere. I'm pretty sure you added component tag, not the actor tag. So
component tag, yes.
Yeah, add actor tag. That's your checking for
Okay.
actor tag.
Thanks. And that's all you need. You need somebody who knew this from the beginning.
That's why pair programming works, actually.
Yes. Okay. So let me improve my tilt maze skills again. So I will guide this guy. Come on. One problem that I'm having right now is that the axes on the mouse are reversed for like this movement. So okay.
No.
So let's see if this guy is actually the same. So I will just, or do I need to save this guy? I don't think so. I think it's enough to add the tag there. So worst case, I have the complete project, so we can take a look in there, or Alec can show what he has done, or do you want to show it, or?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just. I'm pretty sure it's something interesting. So. Okay. Yeah, let's just complete this one so you can see that it's actually working, and I'm actually almost on time. I have still 3 minutes to debug, so let's see what happens. So,
let's show how the debugging works. Well, press F9 on the component begin overlap and check if overlap works or not. And like for fastest debugging, just place the sphere on top of, just above the box and check if the collision works.
That's a good idea. So
you don't need to guide it.
Yeah. People get bored when they see this. They want to guide them themselves. They're thinking, I can do this like in 1 second. What are you doing over there? It's okay. So what happens now is we press play.
Okay.
So
begin overlap is not working. Then collisions are mismatched. So first of all,
collisions.
Check.
Collisions. Great. I think I had this also in this one. Yes.
Okay, C doesn't have collision.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it
So
has collision, but it doesn't have like specific.
yeah. So it doesn't generate collision events, isn't it so? So here you see when you start looking for collision, when you select the sphere, there's this, you can barely see it in this configuration, you have to extend it a little bit. Generate overlap events. Take this one, and it should work. So let's run.
Oh, good job.
Good job.
Okay, but you don't have the default camera, so it's like it's
Yeah, it's resetting.
fast way to add camera. You just take your position,
Yep.
press those the most left button like in the viewport. Yeah. Add camera here. Sorry, camera. Create camera here. Add camera.
This one.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's create camera.
Yeah, so now we have a camera, and what we can do now is we can just make sure that the player always sees that exact view. You just need to make it so that, what is the, what are we looking at?
I'm adding it.
Auto activate for player, I think. So if we do that one, auto player activation. So again, enable this for player 0. Now we should always get the view of the camera, which you can also see by clicking the camera. So if you do this and run the game, the ball will just continuously fall, and we will continuously get the good job
always
message.
have the good job.
Yes. So just to make it a little bit more interesting, I will place the ball over here, check that it falls inside the maze, and we're done. Exactly 2030. And also thanks to Oleg for comments. So I will actually share this project with you, just so you have a reference for the recording, which I think is useful. So now, one more thing. You want to save this guy. I will call this maze map, but whenever you restart the project, you will actually not see this map unless you configure it in project settings. This is confusing to a lot of people, so if I say this as maze map, and just save, when I restart this project, I will see the default level, and then every time I start the project, I have to choose this, or rather open this level. So just double click here, but where you can configure it is, was it edit? Okay. Okay, so a good time maybe to just show this one for the last one. And then maps and modes, and then you have the editor startup map, and instead of open world here, you choose maze map, and that's it.
Okay, that's useful, because I've been, literally, since I started using Unreal, I go and I delete landscape, and then I open up level every time.
The more you know.